Welcome everyone to this second tutorial, which is being organized as part of the Erasmus Plus project entitled Children as Creators of Augmented Reality Stories. My name is Lawrence, I'm from the University of Malta, and this will be the second tutorial, which follows from the preceding first tutorial, which is available through our website, which is cardsproject.com. May I ask you to please mute your mics? Thank you, if you are joining in. So today's tutorial, as you can see, is entitled Converting a Storyboard into an Augmented Reality Story. Before proceeding any further, if you haven't watched or followed the first tutorial, which is on our website, again, cardsproject.eu, I strongly encourage you to follow the first video because this tutorial will build upon the first tutorial. So for today, we have essentially a number of objectives with two main focal points. First of all, we will focus on the purpose of a storyboard, what is a storyboard, and how a storyboard can be useful for both teachers and students to create an augmented reality story. And then we will also discuss a bit about the different tools that we can use in order to create user interactions within our augmented reality story, or specifically within the scenes in our augmented reality stories. So these are the two main focal points which are disclosed in the objectives that you are seeing. So first of all, what is a storyboard and why a storyboard is an important tool that we can use? So a storyboard essentially is a series of illustrations. Normally, these are coupled with small descriptions that help us to visualize the key scenes, the key moments in our story. So a storyboard in itself lays out the sequence of events and also the logical flow of the key scenes in our story. But more importantly, I would argue, is that a storyboard helps both teachers and students to think critically and plan the type of assets, the type of images, sounds, models, the characters that are needed to build each scene in the story, in the augmented reality story that is being created. So by creating a storyboard, users can actually start to plan ahead and think about who are the main characters, what are the assets needed, as well as what models, images, and sounds are required. Now, in this tutorial, I'm going to provide a very tangible example of a story, and this story is illustrated here. So this is a very high-level overview of a storyboard. As you can see, there are 4 key scenes in the story. The numbers at the top left-hand corner indicate the sequence of the story. So we have 4 scenes which have a specific sequence. And as you can see, you can immediately start to recognize that there are certain elements that are specific to each scene, whereas certain elements, for example, the main characters of this story, which are common across all the scenes. So the first scene is, in fact, takes place in an old town. We have our 2 main protagonists of the story, who are Sephora and Johnny. As you can see, in the first scene, we have both a description of the scene itself, which is set in black text. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I have also included what I'm calling instructional cues. These are essentially instructions as to what the users are expected to do when they are interacting with the augmented reality story, or specifically with the augmented reality scene. So in this first scene, we have our 2 characters who are located outside an old town. The users in this augmented reality scene will be able to explore this old town, but they will also be interacting with a stone which is located between Johnny and Sephora, and this stone will reveal something, which is in fact a hidden map. This will take us to the second scene, which takes place in a completely different realm, which is the underwater city of Atlantis. Here, you will notice that once again, users can interact with can explore different assets, but they will also be able to interact with different elements in this scene. And here, in this scene, essentially a huge monster will appear. And here we see again Johnny and Sephora who flee from the underwater city of Atlantis. And this takes us to the third scene, where our two characters find themselves outside the fortified walls of a medieval city. Once again, the users will be able to explore within the city walls themselves. They will see different characters. But there is also, but the users will also be asked to identify a dragon which is hovering around the city. And this, in this scene, again, our two characters, Johnny and Sephora, will flee from this medieval city. And this takes us to the last scene, which is a futuristic city, where for some reason Johnny and Sephora become separated from each other. And here, our female character, Sephora, is asking us to help her locate Johnny. And you will see what happens when, in fact, Johnny gets lost. And the reason for it is that Johnny has found a precious gemstone. So this is essentially these are the four scenes that constitute our story. So without any further ado, I'm going to shift my screen. And you should be able to see, I presume, can someone please confirm you are seeing the user interface of ZepWorks?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is the story, and I'm going to simply immediately go and open the designer, and you will see the four scenes as well as some other scenes that constitute our story. So the first scene that you are seeing is not the old town, but this first scene is in fact a title page, a sort of welcome screen that I have added in order to improve a bit the overall experience of the story. Before I proceed any further, I would like to pause for a moment and make some remarks about this tutorial. So first of all, in this tutorial today, I'm going to focus on the elements that I have highlighted. Some of those elements I have already covered in the first tutorial. Some elements will be new. So we will be switching frequently between augmented reality and scene. We're going to use layers quite often, you will see why, and I'm going to focus much of my attention on this menu here, which is located on the right-hand side. So these will be three elements that I will be referring to quite frequently in this tutorial. Another note before we proceed with this story is that if you recall in the first tutorial, I did make reference that in ZepWorks, which is our augmented reality authoring platform, there are different types of scenes which are supported. And in this story, you will see, in fact, evidence that I am using different kinds of augmented reality scene tracking. In fact, the first screen or the first scene that you are seeing utilizes what is called screen only. In fact, here we do not have any 3D models or three-dimensional assets. What we have in the screen is, in fact, an image, another image here. We also have some text, which has been added through the text tool. We also have some buttons, and these buttons have, in fact, some utility to them, some interactivity associated with them. In fact, these buttons have been added through the social buttons, And the button in the middle is in fact a custom image which has been added recently, and it is this image here. So when the user taps on either one of these buttons, there is an action associated with them. If I scroll down and expand actions, you will see that when the user taps these icons, these will link to a website. And this website, in this case, if I copy it and paste it, is in fact the Facebook page of our project. Okay. So when the user taps on these icons, there's an Instagram page and there's also the website itself. There is these are linking to a page, okay, or a social media page itself. So the way this has been created is essentially what I did was I imported an image or an icon here. I'm going to show you very briefly the process of doing this, okay? So this is an image, for example. I navigated to actions. I click on add new action. And in my case here, I selected links to web page. And all you need to do is simply type in the URL of the page that you want to link the image to. And therefore, when the user taps on that image or icon, it will take the user, it will open a new web page or a corresponding Facebook or a corresponding application, for example, such as Facebook. Something else that I should mention is that, as you can see, everything is well organized. I'm currently disorganizing everything. But in this modality or in this type of scene, what you can do is you can click. So what I'm doing right now is I'm clicking and dragging the three icons. And if I go on transforms and select, for example, align, I can align everything horizontally. And if I want to, I can, for example, put this exactly in the middle. So this helps to make things a bit more, appear a bit more organized. Something else that I could do is probably distribute things horizontally so that the distances between these icons are equidistant. So something else that we have here is also a button. This has been added using a basic button, which I am highlighting here. And essentially, as you can imagine, this button will take us to the first scene. In fact, if I click on this button and I go on actions, you will notice that I have chosen links to scene, and I have chosen the first scene, which is scene number 1, which is in fact the first scene of our story. So I'm going to proceed to scene 1, which is the first scene in our story. And you will see that while it loads, this is how the scene appears using screen relative mode, which is where I have my cursor there. Okay, this is what the user will see when they proceed or when they tap the start button. Okay, you will notice that they are presented with this model here. Okay, by default, they can explore around this model. They can zoom in by pinching or zoom out. And here we have a hint. This hint is in fact a button which doesn't do anything. It's a dummy button, but I have used the text on this button in order to provide some instructions. And as you can see, the instruction that we have is to tap this stone to start our adventure. For this purpose, I'm going to switch to augmented reality mode by clicking on at the top part here. And the reason why I'm doing this is in order to show you what are the actions that are associated with the stone. So the instruction was to tap the stone. So first of all, if we open the layer menu, which is this one here, okay? I'm showing you what I'm going to do here. If we open the layers menu, you will notice that we have a lot of items here. Some items are under the augmented reality layer, and some items, such as the buttons, are under the screen layer. But you will also notice that we have two items which are hidden. One of the items which is hidden is in fact a map. So by default, when the user goes to scene 1, everything will load with the exception of a map, which is hidden by default. So what will happen is that if we tap on the stone, we have two actions, as you can see on the right-hand side. The first action is what is called toggle visibility. So we are going to convert the state of the map because we have the map chosen. And when the user taps on this stone, the map is going to become visible. In fact, what we have done here, I can show you what I did was I have selected this stone. I have selected add new action, toggle visibility. I have to choose first the item for which I want to change the visibility. In my case, it's going to be the map. And then I'm going to change the behavior from hidden to shown, as is by default. So what will happen is that when the user taps on this stone, the map becomes visible. Something else that is invisible is an instruction. So I'm going to show you the end result. So when the user taps on the stone, it will reveal a map, which you haven't seen so far, and it will also reveal an instruction. And the instruction, which is in red, simply states, press next to continue. Once again, by default, these are hidden. And in order to achieve this, again, with this stone, we have another action. We're going to use, again, toggle visibility. And this time, we're going to use to show the text, which is named ABC bracket 3, which is this text here. So two actions happen when the user taps the stone. The map becomes visible, and also the instructions also become visible. So here I am emulating manually what will happen, but in reality, it is important to make sure that by default, both the map and the instructions are invisible. At this point, the user is instructed to tap the next button, and as you can assume, the next button has once again an action associated with it, which is a link to scene, and it will take us to scene number 2, which is the one shown here. So I'm going to proceed with explaining our second scene, and then we will have a pause where if you have any questions or if you require any clarifications, you can in fact ask me those questions or clarifications. So this is our second scene. This is the underwater city of Atlantis. And here we have several things going on. So first of all, the user can explore the various elements. We have a shipwreck, we have a temple. We have also several sea creatures here. But if you recall in this story, there was mention of a monster. In fact, you will notice that by default, the monster, which is highlighted here, is in fact hidden. So by default, once again, the monster is hidden. So if we look at what the user sees, once again, we have a hint. And the hint tells us to tap on the mysterious rock formation. So that means that the rock formation has some actions which are in fact associated with it. Before I proceed any further, I would like to make emphasis on this particular element, which is a clownfish. Now, certain 3D models, when they are imported, this is not valid for every 3D model, but some 3D models have what are called inbuilt animations. So when I downloaded and found this model had already a built-in animation in it, okay? Now, when the scene loads by default, I have chosen for the clownfish, to be animated. So when the scene loads, this fish would appear as if it is swimming. If we wish to, we can either select none, and that means that the fish will appear as static, so no animation. Or if we want to, we can select a particular pose. So you can see me moving a slider, and what I am doing there, I am choosing a particular frame from that animation. So this animation has a total of 34 frames, and I am selecting one of those frames to be the default state of that fish. So with either pose or non-selected, the fish would be static. If I choose animation, by default, the fish would be animated, as you can see from the preview on the top right-hand corner. So here, my emphasis is that some 3D models, not all, have built-in animations that we can use in creating our augmented reality scenes. Now, if you recall, we made reference to the mysterious rock formation, which I have selected here. I'm going to focus a bit more on it because this is a crucial element in this particular scene. If I scroll to actions, you will notice that there are quite a lot of things going on, okay? There are in fact 4 actions taking place. I'm going to preview all the animations so that you see the end result first. So this might be a bit slow, or I can preview it later on. So first of all, the first action that we have is toggle visibility. So what will happen is, in fact, that the monster, which is here, will change its visibility from hidden to shown. So basically, if I had to show you manually, what will happen is that the monster, currently it's invisible, it will become visible. And while it loads, this is the monster that I am referring to, okay? So step 1, the monster will become visible. Now, another thing that will happen is that if we go on the AR layer, or sorry, on the screen layer, you will notice that there is also something which is hidden. So what will also happen, what will happen when we tap on the rock formation is that there is a description here which tells us what's happening. It's narrating what happens in the scene. So a huge monster has appeared. Johnny and Sephora touch the stone, which takes them to the next scene. Press next to continue. So it tells us what is going on. I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to go back to the augmented reality layer. So we have the toggle visibility where the monster appears. We have also a description which appears in the screen layer, and also the hint which told us to tap the stone disappears. So basically these 2 buttons change their visibility. So one becomes visible and the other becomes invisible. So this is what's going on using the toggle visibility. So we are changing the visibility to show of the description. And for the hint, which we had originally, it is changing its visibility to hidden. So it disappears. Now, the last, and I would say the most important, because it is the most dramatic, so to speak, action that we have is in fact an animation. So if you recall, I have mentioned earlier that some 3D models have built-in animations. Now, in the case of this monster does not have any built-in animation, but nevertheless, we can add our own animation. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an animation whereby the monster makes an entrance in this, through the arch, basically through the rock formation, as you can see from the preview here. So how did I create that animation? So I'm going to go through it step by step so that you can understand better how that animation was created. So first of all, I have selected the rock formation. It's important that the rock formation is selected. Why? Because this is what triggers that, that action, which is the monster making an entrance. So I am clicking add new action, and I'm going to choose animate object, which you can see highlighted here. The first thing that we have to choose is what is the object that is going to be animated. In our case, from the list of 3D models that we have, I'm going to select the monster because I want to animate that particular element. The second step is to choose the type of animation. In our case, we have 4 options: move, orbit, scale, or spin. For now, I'm going to select move because we want to force the monster to move through the rock formation. Now, the way we specify movement is through coordinates, through XY coordinates. If you notice, the rock formation has a Y coordinate, which is the green arrow, a red coordinate, which corresponds to the X axis, and the Z coordinate, which corresponds to the Z axis, which is blue. I'm going to choose move by because what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify a distance by how much the monster is going to move. So I want the monster to move forward by a certain amount. Let's say that that amount is going to be 5 units. So the monster is going to move in the direction of the blue arrow forward by 5 units. In fact, if I had to show you a preview by clicking on the play button here, you would see what's going on. So now, right now, this is not what the animation that we want, okay? But we are starting to tweak this animation. We will tweak this animation for it to make sense. So first of all, you can notice that the monster is going back and forth. That is something that we can easily switch off by unticking the back and forth option. Okay, so this is the effect. Now, if you notice, the animation is looping forever. The monster is moving 5 paces forward, but then it is resetting its position. What we want is in reality for the monster to move forward and stop there. So here, I'm not going to select loop forever. I'm going to choose loop count, and I want this animation to play only once. And this is why I have one chosen. So now you will see that we are starting to get there, okay? The monster will move forward and stop there. Now, an issue that some of you might have noticed is that in its motion, the monster is going through the arch. You will see that it is colliding through the arch. The way we can address this is to force the monster to move a bit sideways using the x-axis. So in the offset panel here, I'm going to specify, you have to, basically, this is a matter of trial and error. I'm going to specify an offset of -1. So, okay, that made it worse. So I'm going to specify an offset of +1. And you can see now that the monster has in fact gone through the hole that is formed through the arch. Okay, it has not gone through the rock itself. Something else that we can tweak is the speed of the movement. So you can see that the motion is quite fast. The animation is quite fast. One way that we can use to reduce the speed of the animation is through the duration. So the longer the duration, the slower the animation will be. So if I specify a duration of 5 seconds, this animation will be, as you can imagine, 5 times slower, as you can in fact notice. I'm going to specify this to be 3 seconds. Again, this is a matter of sometimes trial and error. One other thing that we can specify with this type of animation is in fact easing. Easing is basically how the monster moves in terms of accelerating and decelerating. So with linear, which is the default option, the speed of the monster is constant throughout. If we choose, for example, ease in, the monster will start moving slowly and then accelerate. So you can see it's quite slow, and all of a sudden, it moves quite quickly. If we choose ease out, what will happen is that the monster will start moving, and then it will decelerate. Or we have the option to choose ease in and ease out, so it will accelerate and decelerate. Another option, which does not make sense in our case, is to use bounces. So when the monster arrives to its location, it will basically bounce around. In our case, I'm going to choose simply ease in and ease out, so the monster will start accelerating and then decelerate accordingly. So this is essentially the animation, a way through which we have an asset that we have animated. There are other animations that we can add, and they are not necessarily, they don't have to be related to the monster itself. So by selecting the rock formation here, I'm going to create another type of animation, which is a spin animation. So once again, I'm going to add a new action. I'm going to select animate object. And this time around, I'm going to choose another object. In my case, I'm going to choose, let's say, fish 4, okay? And I'm not going to use move, I'm going to use spin. So what will happen is that fish 4 is going to spin on its own axis. In this case, fish 4 is the octopus, which you can see at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. So right now, as you can see, the octopus is looping forever. The animation is going on forever. What I'm going to do, I'm going to simply choose loop count so that the octopus will only loop once. And I'm going to change the duration to 3 seconds so that the rotation, the spinning of the octopus is a bit slower. If we want to, we can reverse the direction. So rather than spinning clockwise, the octopus is rotating in anti-clockwise direction. And what is important, what should be mentioned, is the axis of rotation. In this case, it makes sense for the octopus to rotate along its y-axis, okay? But if we change the axis, you will notice that the spinning will take place along a different axis. For example, if I choose the x-axis, it will rotate along its horizontal axis. In our case, it makes sense for the octopus to spin around the y-axis as default. So basically, these are 5 actions that have been added, and these actions are all triggered when the user, as instructed, taps on the mysterious rock formation. So we have all these animations going on, and then once these animations finish, we will have the next instruction, which will tell the user to essentially move on to the next scene. However, before moving on to the next scene, I would like to see if there are any questions from those who are attending this tutorial. Maybe it would be idea either to show of hands or type in the chat if you have any questions. So are there any questions?
I have a question about the initial buttons, Lawrence.
Okay.
When you put on the first screen, the buttons which link to Facebook or a web page, do the actions have to be in a particular format for the URLs?
What do you mean by particular format?
Okay, so for example, if I wanted to link to Google, do I simply write www.google.com, or do I need to put in HTTP in front?
In my case, I put HTTP. It's best to put the whole URL, the complete URL. But since there's a good chance, right, that this augmented reality story would be accessed through a smartphone or tablet. And it may be the case that a student would have a Facebook app, which is installed, especially if it's their own smartphone. So rather than linking to the Facebook website, there is an option. Let me explain. So you can either link to a Facebook web page, but there is also the option to link to social networking. You see this option here?
Yes.
That will prompt the app. It will trigger the app, not the website. So if you have Facebook app, which is installed, it will open the app itself.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
I have another question. Where is exactly the recording of this tutorial in the Erasmus file for later when we try for practice more with it? I don't know where is exactly keeping these recordings.
So the recordings are all located on the website.
In the website. Okay,
yes,
perfect.
they are still not published because we are still assembling them, but everything will be made available. I believe Heather has already pasted in the chat the link to the first tutorial, which is currently published on YouTube, but you need to have the link. It's unlisted.
Okay, and can you provide us the link of this season of this session? Will be published in the website?
Yes, of course. Once this
Okay.
is published, because the recording takes some time to process,
Yeah.
once it is published, once it is ready and edited, we will provide you with a link to the second tutorial. But the first tutorial is already available.
It's already available.
Eventually, it will be made available also through the website.
I've put the link in the chat again for those who
Yeah.
also arrived a little bit later.
Yeah, but for example, to the link to this session, we cannot access until you publish for the public, or for example, the team that is inside. So we can access before you publish in the app, or we must wait as the public.
You have to wait a bit for the recording to process and for the recording to be edited. But once this is available, I will communicate with you internally and provide you with a link.
Yes, okay. And how long, more or less, do you think?
I'd say it will take us approximately a week between editing, or even a bit more, for editing and compiling everything.
I don't understand. How long, more or less? 1 month, you said, or?
No. It will take us 1 week to have the
only
link available.
Okay, so it is perfect. So thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, any more questions? Good. So I'm going to proceed because we're past half the time and we have some other things that I wish to explain. So once the user presses the next button, okay, again, we are using link to scene option. So I have selected the button, links to scene, and the next scene is scene number 3, which is this one here. And if you recall from the story, our 2 characters found themselves outside the walls of a fortified medieval city. And if we look at the screen, what the user actually sees, basically we have a hint once again, and the hint tells us, can you spot the dragon? Tap it once, you spot it, press next to continue. So once the users identify where the dragon is, as you can imagine, the dragon is somewhere in the sky, they can press next to continue. So the question is, what happens? What are the actions associated with the dragon? So if I select the dragon, because the users are going to tap on the dragon, 2 things will happen. So first of all, before we proceed any further, the dragon, this 3D model, has also built-in animations. In fact, currently, you don't see it moving because it is static. It is loaded as static, but it also has a built-in animation, which is this one shown in the preview, or maybe easier to show you what it does. So this is the animation that is built into this 3D model. Now, by default, this animation is turned off because I have chosen none to be the default state of the dragon. So the dragon will not do anything, but when the user taps on the dragon, 2 actions will take place, as you can see here. So first of all, I'm going to refer to the bottom action because it's the easiest one. What will happen is we will animate an object. The object that is going to be animated is going to be the dragon itself. And rather than creating a movement or spinning, we are going to use the built-in animation itself. So the built-in animations are available for selection. So what will happen is that with this action, the dragon will start flapping its wings. Okay, the dragon will start flapping its wings. This is using the animation which is built in to this 3D model. Now, the second thing, or the second action that is triggered by tapping on the dragon is what is called an orbit. So once again, I'm going to show you how I created this. Again, I'm going to select the dragon, click Add New Action. I'm going to select Animate Object. In this case, I am also going to animate the dragon itself, the model of the dragon. But this time around, rather than using the built-in animation, I am going to use orbit. So what is orbit? Basically, my intent is for the dragon to circle around the castle, to go around the castle. So the first thing that we need to specify is a center of rotation, or rather, a center point around which the dragon is going to go around. Now we can specify coordinates, okay? Or it might be easier to specify the center of an object. Now, if you notice, we have a town here. The town has a center point, which is shown here, okay? So the center point of the town, I will highlight it, is this one here, okay? That is the center of our model. And I'm going to use the center of this model as the center of rotation. So the dragon will go around this, keeping an equal distance from this center point, okay? So again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on, I'm clicking the dragon, select, I'm going to choose the orbit option, which is shown here. Rather than specifying a point, because I'm not sure where the 0, 0 is, I'm going to select an object. And in my case, I'm going to choose the castle town, which is the model of this town, and use that as the center of rotation. Okay. We also need to specify some other things. So first of all, we need to specify the orbit angle. That is whether the dragon will do a full turn, a full circle or not. For example, if we specify an angle of 180 degrees, this is half a circle. So the dragon will go around half a circle. We are going to choose also loop forever. I have unticked back and forth. And the duration is going to be a bit longer, let's say 5 seconds, because 1 second is too fast. So if you had to watch a preview, this is what the dragon will do. I should probably zoom out. So you can see the dragon orbiting, but as you will notice, it's not completing a full circle, but only half a circle, because we specified here that the dragon would not do 360 degrees, it would only cover 180 degrees. In our case, I'm going to change this to 360 degrees, okay? So that the dragon goes around, the model goes around a full circle. And it keeps doing this over and over and over again. So essentially, if we had to combine these two animations, this is the net result. So we have two things going on. We have the dragon flapping its wings, and at the same time, the model is going around the town that we have, the medieval town. And as you can see, the end result is quite, I think, in my opinion, is quite a nice result to have. So again, this is another animation. Something else that we could do to this model is, I'm going to mention it just to cover all tracks. We could also increase the scale of the dragon. That is, we could make the dragon increase its size. And the way we do this is to specify a scale multiplier. So with a scale multiplier of 0.5, the dragon would not enlarge, but rather it will become smaller. It would become actually half its size. If I specify a scale multiplier of 2, the dragon would be twice its original size. Okay. As you can see, it's going back and forth. I'm going to switch off back and forth. Okay. I must admit that this is the first time that I have tried this combined with everything, but as you can see, the dragon is becoming larger and the loop is resetting. Okay. One last thing that we can add to make the experience more interesting is we can add a sound. Okay, so we can have a sound playing through the user's device. In fact, I'm going to choose, this time I'm not going to animate the object, but with the dragon selected, I'm going to choose play sound. Now I don't have any dragon sounds, but the closest thing that we have is a dinosaur, okay? And I'm going to use this, this file, okay, which is a very short sound. And basically, again, with this loop, I'm not sure that the sound will play in the preview, but with this loop, the user will also hear a sound which is that of a dinosaur in reality. So as you can see, we can add a very large amount of actions in order to make the experience more and more, the augmented reality experience more and more in a way realistic. So this will take us to the screen, which is what the user will see through their device. And when the user presses next, I'm going to move on, they are presented with the last scene in our story, if you recall, where in the scene, Sephora and Johnny, basically, they get separated from each other, and Sephora is asking us to essentially try to help us find Johnny. And this is a good opportunity for students to actually explore around. And in fact, you will see that Johnny is hidden here. And when the user step Johnny, okay, we have a hint. So when the user step on Johnny, we are using a toggle visibility, which will show us, which will give us some instructions on what to do. Essentially, the users here are prompted to tap on the flying cars and characters. And as you can imagine, all of the characters here, the flying cars and characters have animations allocated to them. For example, this robot here has a spinning animation associated with it, okay, using the spin type animation. This car here, the red car, okay, has an orbit animation allocated to it. And in fact, the center point of the rotation is this building here, which I am highlighting. And the car would go around this building, essentially. We have to be careful to position the buildings accordingly, because as you can see, the car is going through the black building here. But as you can see, you can add an infinite or a very large number of animations. Another item which is animated here is this white car, futuristic car here, which has a move command. As you can see, we are using a move animation so that the car moves by five steps. Okay, so this takes us to the end of our story in a way, because although the story in itself has ended, in augmented reality we can also add some other interactive elements. Another type of scene which I have added here is something which I have never covered before. If you recall, again, during the first tutorial, I mentioned that there are different types of tracking experiences. In this augmented reality story, we have used world tracking. The first screen, we have used the screen-only type of tracking. And in this scene in particular, we have what is called face tracking. Okay, so what is face tracking? Essentially, the first time that you open a face tracking scene, I'm going to delete the helmet for the time being. You are presented with a mannequin, or rather with the head of a mannequin. Okay. What you need to do is to find a 3D model, which is, for example, a helmet or a hat. Okay. I'm going to I'm going to press undo to try to find the helmet. Okay. So let's say I have imported this helmet. The first thing that I need to do, so this is a 3D model that I have in my library, okay? One of the things that we have to do is, in fact, to identify an attachment point. As you can see, the mannequin has a number of dots. These dots correspond to the left eyebrow, right eyebrow, nose, etc. So what are these points? These points are used by the selfie camera of the device that you have in order to track that facial feature and coordinate it with the 3D model. So that if the user rotates his head or her head clockwise, the 3D model also rotates clockwise accordingly. So in my case, I'm going to choose, for example, the nose as my anchor point. And all I need to do is essentially put the helmet, okay, using the transform commands, the helmet on. So what will happen is that, first of all, this type of scene will activate the selfie camera, and the camera will track the tip of the user's nose in order to adjust the position and orientation of the helmet accordingly. And the end result is that it will appear that as if the user is wearing this futuristic helmet. You can try this in fact on your own, because we will be providing a link to this augmented reality story itself. So this is not part of the story, but it is, let's say, an additional activity that you can integrate in order to make the augmented reality experience at the end of the day more enjoyable. Here I am showing you an example of a screen-only type of scene. Once again, here we don't have any 3D models, but essentially I am presenting a sort of quiz, a very rudimentary quiz, I must say. The question that we have is, what was the color of the sea monster in Atlantis? The correct answer is green. These are 3 buttons. If the user taps or selects the correct button, we have actions allocated with each button. So if the user taps the correct button, what will happen is that we will show a text, and that text says, your answer is correct. So what happens is, if the user taps green, your answer is correct appears, becomes visible. If the user taps any other button, 2 prompts will appear. First of all, it will show your answer is incorrect, and another button will appear which says tap to try again. So if I choose violet, what will happen is we will have your answer is incorrect showing, and also tap to try again. Now, if I press on tap to try again, it will reset, it will basically render invisible, your answer is incorrect, and tap to try again. Here again, I'm using the toggle visibility option in order to switch things on and off. Now, this is, I would admit, this is a very hard way to create a quiz, because if you have in your own school a platform that you use for students to take their own quiz, all you need to do, as we did in the title screen, is you would create a button called take quiz, okay, or whatever you want to call it. And all you would need to do is create an action and link this button to the website where you host your quiz. Okay, so you don't have to do it through augmented reality. You could simply create a button where the user, when the user taps the button, it will take them to a website where they will take their test or their quiz. Scene number 7 is again the same thing. Okay, here we have another question. And last but not least, it is important, I think, to include a concluding screen. So here the user would have reached the end of their story. So you have a congratulatory message. What I think is important to include is a very important button, in my opinion, which is the list of resources used. So again, this is a button which I have, and associated with this button, there is basically a Google document, which I'm going to show you. And when the user taps on that button, it will show a document, a read-only document. And this document, basically, once it loads, it will provide you with a list of all the resources that were used, including the sources that were used. So, for example, this fish here was obtained through Sketchfab. This octopus was obtained through Microsoft Paint 3D Library. And you have all the resources here that were used, and also the sources, the web resources that were utilized in order to download and use these resources. I think it is important to acknowledge the work that has been created by other people, which is, in this case, it's not my own. Again, we have the 3 buttons, the 3 links to our social media platform and also the website. And finally, last but not least, we have the home button, which takes us back to the first. This is, let's say, this is the end of our story. I would like to mention that we have a third tutorial which is being planned, and based on questions and discussions that took place internally, The next tutorial, which will be the third and final tutorial, will focus on the different resources that you can use to obtain digital assets. In this tutorial, I already made reference to two resources that I used. One of them is Sketchfab, and another resource is Microsoft Paint 3D. But we will go in the next tutorial into more detail about the resources that you can use not only for 3D models, but also for images, sounds, videos, etc. So thank you for your attention. I think we have just enough time for questions, for some last comments or questions that you may have. So are there any questions or comments or clarifications that you need? As a small reminder, Heather has also put in the chat a short form for you to kindly provide us your feedback. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. So any questions or comments? Okay, then. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope that we will see you in the third tutorial, which will be planned in July.